So how did you get involved in the theater world? Is this a job you always had, or is this something that you always wanted to do?
So my path to theater actually began in academia. I was working on my PhD in English. I was really interested in drama in particular, which is a genre that's not taught very much in literature tracks. So I was really kind of forging my own way, like, you know, trying to find things that I could study beyond Shakespeare
Mhm.
while finishing this degree. And so I thought I would be a faculty member at a university somewhere. That was the sort of path I think I was on from a young age. And then my sister got very sick,
Mhm.
and she died.
Mhm.
And I took a leave of absence from my program. And she had always been the one taking pictures, the one on stage. I saw her in plays in college when I was a kid. And
Yeah.
so she had always had a very different orientation to theater and to drama than I did. But when she died, I needed to make a change. And
Mhm.
so I started working for a local hospice because she had been in hospice care when she was
Mhm.
sick. And they hired me to do press writing for them and also to develop curriculum to help youth use drama and theater skills
Mhm.
to cope with loss.
Mhm.
After a year of doing that, I decided that I wanted to be on the other side of theater, not just studying it,
Mhm.
but making it. And I had a master's degree in theater, so I had studied, you know, theater practice before going on to do my doctorate. And so that was it. So in
Mhm.
2010, I made the transition and I founded a theater company. As a woman, it is not easy to find opportunities. And so for me, it felt like, you know, there was nothing could be worse than what I had already been through
Mhm.
in the years leading up to that decision. And so I started writing a blog, and I met a lot of theater artists around the country and beyond. And I found theaters that really spoke to me, theaters that were doing experimental work like I gravitated to and still do, theaters that were focused on plays by women
Mhm.
and plays by LGBTQ playwrights. And then I founded Thinking Cap. So that is how I got to where I am today, was sort of rising like a phoenix out of the loss of my sister and
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to move forward in a way that was meaningful. Um, yeah,
And that was so in 2010.
that was in 2010 that I founded Thinking Cap. Yeah, my sister died in 2008, and then I worked for hospice, and then in 2010 I started blogging, and I don't really blog anymore. But
I
that
was
was
gonna
the moment.
ask.
That was the moment when blogging was
I
a thing, right?
remember,
Like
yeah.
everyone, and it really, it worked.
Yeah.
I really found people that way through blogging and through Twitter back when it
Mhm.
was a nice place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried it for a little bit. I was
Yeah.
good about a year, but and
Yeah,
then
I mean, it's time consuming
it
though, right?
is.
So it served its purpose. And once I got into actually making theater, I had a lot less time to you know, nurture the blog and nurture
Yeah.
Twitter. But it was a stepping stone that was really, really useful to me at the time.
So were you in this area when you started thinking cap?
I was. So I had been in Tampa at University of South Florida
Oh, okay.
working on my doctorate. And there is more of an arts and culture scene in Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater today than
Mm.
there was at the time, but nothing then like there is now. So I felt like I had to leave, and it seemed
Mm.
like South Florida was the place to go. So I started making trips here, and I saw some shows at different theaters, and I sort of assessed the theater ecology at the time, and I felt like there was nothing here like what I wanted to create.
Mm.
And so I had found a play that I was interested in staging. It was a play called Milk, Milk, Lemonade by a playwright named Joshua Kunkel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a play about two young boys, one who is gay and one who is closeted gay, very homophobic,
Mm-hmm.
total bully. And it was set on a farm in middle America. It had a talking chicken,
Oh.
and it had a grandmother that was meant to be played by a man in drag. So it had all the kind of campy elements and this
Yeah.
sort of messaging that spoke to me. And I'd met the playwright through my blog. and Twitter. And so so that was the play that I decided to do. And I met a producer down here who had just opened a theater called Empire Stage nearby, just on the outskirts of Wilton Manors. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I don't know exactly how, but where there's a will, there's a way. And so that's how it all began, with a little play called Milk, Milk, Lemonade, which really actually, it went on to have,
it went on to be quite big.
It had a lot of productions around the country.
I've heard of Milk, Milk, Lemonade.
Yeah, it had a lot of productions around the country, a lot of school productions, university productions. And then the playwright was very active in the downtown New York scene for years, but has since moved to Los Angeles and now is a screenwriter. So, which is something that's happened with a lot of playwrights in recent years. They've started to transition into writing for other mediums, because playwriting is a hard way to make a living. So,
okay. So Kristen was telling me that you did a take on Taming of the Shrew.
Yes.
Okay, we want to hear more about this.
Yes. Okay. So Taming of the Shrew is a play that I can say, now that I'm on the other side of having just directed it and designed it, that I need some space from.
Oh, okay.
I genuinely love Shakespeare. I think there's a reason why his works have endured. There are lots of reasons why his works have endured. But it's a play that I kind of, eyes wide open, I went into staging it knowing that it was a play that we would have to adapt and do something to mess with, disrupt a bit. But I don't think I could have anticipated until I lived through the process, exactly what that would feel like. So it's a play that I taught 2 semesters in a row at a local university called Barry University, located in Miami Shores. And it is a play that I taught in a course called Shakespeare in Love. And if you know Taming of the Shrew, the way that love is sort of defined, how love plays out in that work, for some people, it's like Ozzie and Harriet. For me, I see very much my parents' very complicated, problematic relationship that has lasted 50 plus years in that couple, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing, but to each his own in terms of how you interpret what love means in this play and whether or not these title characters love each other. But so when I taught the play, the first semester, I thought I would never be able to stage it. And my students the female identifying students in particular, were very bothered by the play. The second semester I taught it, I thought, okay, I could do it, but I would have to do something to it, right? So the concept that we had was to stage the play in a way that would be audience interactive, would allow audience to see within this relationship between Kate and Petruchio what happens whenever you change the gender or the orientation or the race of the actors that are embodying these roles, so that they could kind of, in theory, vote in real time on what they thought was funnier or what they thought was more disturbing. But we ended up changing venues from the time that we developed that concept, and we were no longer in a space that had the kind of technology to allow us to do that. In a different space, at the Broward Center, in a space called the Abdo New River Room, without the technology, we had to figure out how to still sort of explore casting changes and what that would mean for how the play ultimately lands in the final moment, right? And so we cast the play in a contemporary office space, and we made the outer character, Christopher Sly, into a kind of bad boss. And the character that we really ultimately ended up taming is actually not Kate and not Petruchio, but it's actually this outer character that Shakespeare puts in the play. And the play is a play within a play. So Shakespeare wants us to be, I think, conscious of the fact that we're watching a play. We're not meant to see it, in my opinion, we're not meant to see it the way that some might, if they've seen the Liz Taylor film version. That's what a lot of older audience members came to the production bearing in mind. They were like, oh, Liz Taylor. And, this idea, there was one older woman that attended a performance who said, I can't wait to see how you tame Kate. She's such a bitch. She needs to be tamed. And I was like, Kate doesn't get tamed in our production, right? So the Taming of the Shrew, really controversial work. I mean, we have a podcast series with my theater company called Thinking Cap, and I interviewed several different scholars and directors that have dealt with the play before, and they are completely divided. Some of the men were very vocal about identifying as feminist, and they said they will never direct or produce it again. They think it's highly sexist. She said she thinks it's the most sexist play. She would never ever, she would never want to speak to the play, and she never taught it. And yet, also, there was a woman director that I interviewed that said she's done it 3 or 4 times, different theaters around the country, loves it, thinks it's not sexist at all, thinks that they have one of the greatest relationships in all of Shakespeare. So the moral of the story is there is no consensus on that play. And for me, on the other side of it, I just felt like I think the play is really problematic. It's one of Shakespeare's first 3 plays. It's one of his earliest works. It's not one of his greatest plays, but it's one of his most memorable. But I think it's memorable for reasons that bother me so much that I just, like I said at the beginning, I need space. Yeah. I'm going to tell you the truth. Yeah, so the podcast series is called Shakespeare Was Here. And if you just go to thinkingcaptheater.org, you'll find that and our other podcast series. We have one on Oscar Wilde, and we have one on the lesbian Latino playwright Maria Irene Fornés. So we're always, as we develop our seasons, we're always looking for opportunities to create conversations around the shows that people that are not local can experience. So great. Shakespeare Was Here, if you want to hear some wide-ranging views on the Taming of the Shrew.
We do. We're going to have to listen because we love listening to podcasts. We listen to them all the time. So we'll definitely have to add it to our playlist. Well, I would love to ask you about when you were saying, your title, you said costume designer, right? Correct. Yeah. Tell me more about that, because that has always fascinated me, because I love clothes and fashion and plays and movies and stuff, so I'm always looking to see.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say as a theater artist, my primary hat for the last 14 years has been as a director and as a producer. And because I started Thinking Cap as one person who just was on this mission, and I had to sort of build a team of people around me once I got through that first show. Theater, very much like a downtown kind of theater aesthetic, which is you do it yourself, right? So I got into doing costume design because there was no one that I was going to have, that I was going to pay to do it at the time whenever I first started the company. This is before we were writing grants and before we were fundraising, right? And so I've always had an interest in fashion, and I just started making it happen. I mean, I wasn't building costumes. It was all thrifting, and
so you would just go thrifting
and sourcing in ways that we could do it inexpensively. But over time, it shifted, and there was a point where I saw a work by an artist named Robert Wilson. And he remains to this day, one of my greatest idols as an artist. And he is a very controlling director when it comes to design. He has a very specific vision for design. If you lined up a bunch of directors and designers' works in a row, you would pick his out in a minute because it is so distinct. And so, and he's very into visual storytelling. And so that really spoke to me. I love the idea of I always think of productions whenever I'm in the rehearsal process, like a cartoon flip book, and what kind of story could be told if it was all told in tableau and there was no dialogue. So I approach things very visually, and costume is just one more piece of that equation, right? So I like to work in black and white, and primary color, pops of color. You'll see it whenever you see pulp. And so I got into costume design just kind of because there was nobody else to do it. And then I realized that I was pretty good at it, and I enjoyed it. And to me, it was really part of supporting the actors and figuring out who their characters were. Now I can't imagine not doing it. And then over time, I started to get asked to do freelance costume design. So then it was it felt even more meaningful because it was someone outside of my own company was wanting me to take on that kind of work. So that was fun.
I love that. I'm I want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I got more serious about it and started to actually look into, look at design books and look at costume design and then I started to make things. Then I got more creative, and it wasn't just about sourcing. It's a lot of it. It makes life easy now, being able to source things online, but there's still a lot of thrifting and still a lot of making. In The Taming of the Shrew, there is this ridiculous dress that has to be made for Katharina. And so I went and I bought different different dresses and deconstructed things and attached them different ways. And so I've gotten a little bit more into the building and not just of the sourcing, which is
so you
cool.
sew the costumes too?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the piece. So for this particular show now that we're doing with Pulp at Island City Stage, there's everything is ready to wear. So it just depends on what a script calls for.
And you were in charge of the costumes for Pulp?
Yep, I did the costumes for Pulp, which is fun. I love shows that are period specific as opposed to new plays, contemporary plays where you're looking at the latest fashion. Pulp is set in 1956, so it's fun to go back and look at styles from the 50s, and also to think about that. I mean, Pulp is a lesbian play, and so to think about this was the heyday of butch femme dynamics, especially in bar culture at the time, and so looking at what that means from a costuming standpoint is a lot of fun.
Yeah, Kristen's seen it 5 times. I've never seen it. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
To be
here
I
hope
tonight.
She hasn't built it up to be better than it is.
Oh no, she has built it up. I didn't want to know. I like being like surprised. I don't like knowing the story. So like I don't know anything about this play. All I know is that Kristen is in love with it. Yeah.
Well, Pulp is a special play. I mean, there are not a ton of known plays that deal with lesbian themes that have all woman identified lesbian characters. It's a special play for that reason and others. I mean, the only other play that I've directed that has an all woman cast that is all lesbian identified is a play called Last Summer at Bluefish Cove by Jane Chambers, and I had the opportunity to direct that last summer at another nearby theater called The Foundry, where they launched a sort of women's brand of their main brand, Plays of Wilton. They launched Women of Wilton. And so we staged that last summer under the Women of Wilton banner. And that play is set in the 70s. It was written in the 70s. And it's pretty typical of any kind of literature that deals with lesbians historically has always ended tragically. And so what's really, really awesome about Pulp is that it ends happily.
Yay!
For everyone. So there's a plot spoiler. No lesbians die. You're really hard pressed to find that. Actually, I just this week, I just read one of the first lesbian pulp fiction novels ever written called Spring Fire, by a woman who went by the pseudonym Vin Packer. She had lots of pseudonyms. I think her name was Margaret Meeker. She just died in the last year or two. Anyway, Spring Fire, published in 1952, sold 1.5 million copies. And the publisher told her that in order to publish it, that he was like, yes, we want this content. It's going to sell like hotcakes, but you cannot condone homosexuality, right? Like something has to go wrong. And boy, does it. Like the first third of the book, I was like, this is kind of boring. And then of course there was occasionally like some illicit sex happening. It's set on a college campus in the early 50s. And then the way that it all like unravels is just devastating. I mean, it is, and it has plot twists. I mean, I really give credit to the piece. I highly recommend reading it. But it ends really tragically. It ends tragically for the more straight passing character. She's sent off to an asylum, and it ends tragically for the butcher, like more self-aware, self-proclaiming lesbian, because she kind of goes back into the passing world and is coupled up with a guy in the end. So, if that's our history is literature, whether it was written by a lesbian or a man, it doesn't matter. Like the history of lesbian in the creative arts is not typically very positive. So Pulp is a play that is very joyful. Yeah. And we like that.
We love joy.
It is also very sexy. It's a very sexy play.
Well, I can tell even by the set. I'm like,
the set is kind of sexy. That was something that was important. That like we were. It's swanky. It's not like It's not a dirty underground lowbrow club. And the character at the center of the play, one of the characters at the center of it, is a character named Vivian Blaine. There really was an actress named Vivian Blaine. So Patricia Kane, who wrote Pulp, obviously was aware of some of the name dropping that she was doing with some of the nods to old Hollywood. But the main character, Vivian Blaine, inherited a couple of family businesses, and one of them is lipstick. And boy, is she ever a lipstick lesbian. It took me a little bit to catch on to the fact that was actually in the play. Like, I heard this idea of being lipstick lesbian, but I didn't realize. I was like, oh wait, Vivian Blaine, this character, has a lipstick business. Of course she does, right? So she's got money. So the well in our set is very sexy and lavish with our Baroque wallpaper and our black and our gold and our red velvet curtains. So
it's definitely sexier than the production that I saw.
Yeah,
that one was a very underground. The set was very, very minimal, not nearly as fancy.
Yeah. No, so we were very fortunate.
Yeah, I liked it. I like it.
Yeah. We had a real costume budget and a real set budget, and we were able to create a high quality professional production.
So you said you've been a part of mostly lesbian themed plays, right?
Three. Yeah. So I've directed 3 different. I mean, I'm just realizing this as I'm talking to you. Yeah. I've directed in a very short amount of time. I've directed 3 lesbian plays. So a sort of landmark play from the 70s, Last Summer at Bluefish Cove, and then Pulp, which has been around for several decades now, but is not produced nearly as much as Last Summer at Bluefish Cove is. And then most recently, before Pulp, I directed a play called The Dyke and the Porn Star by a playwright named Bela Travis, who is San Francisco based, I believe, or at least she was for years. And The Dyke and the Porn Star is a very sexy play. It's a very funny play. It's a fantasy play, and it is about a butch lesbian named Chance, who is dying to be a bottom, having always been a top. And so Chance is, and this play was written in the 90s. It's set around the year 2000. And she's in love with this porn star, and the porn star is also a lesbian, and the porn star is very anti-relationship with a fan. And by the end of the play, Chance gets to bottom to her favorite porn star, and the favorite porn star comes around to this idea that sometimes you can find love in places where you have set limits, that sometimes you have to break down those walls. So it's a very interesting little two-hander play, actually, that might get revived in June, so next month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it had a short run about a month ago that was very well received. People were very surprised.
And would you be in charge of it? Like, would you?
I mean, I directed it, and I did the costume and the set for that, and my partner did the projection and lighting and sound design. It was a very tight little team of women and non-binary artists that worked on it. Yeah, it was very intimidating to go into that too, because the script is kind of vague in terms of the degree of nudity and contact that the actors have to have. So we hired an intimacy director who was very, very helpful at blocking all of those things, because there were definitely moments where I felt like I was actually staging a porno.
Yeah.
I was like, I guess we all signed up for this.
Yeah.
But it was all like, we at home, because my partner and I have 3 kids, we just used an acronym to refer to it. We called it DAPS instead of the full name, because we were like, okay, this is the only show that our kids have never actually been around the process for good reason. But it was all done very tastefully with a lot of integrity, and everyone felt very comfortable. And it was, I think, a surprising play. It was a more touching. Some people that came to see it were like, I thought there was going to be more nudity, or I didn't know that there was going to be so much love and romance.
Oh, that's good.
Well, what did you think you were coming to see? The title's a little bit misleading.
So you mentioned you have kids. How many?
Yes.
So you have 3.
3 kids.
What are their ages?
They are, so I have 2 daughters and a son. My oldest daughter, Violet, is 17. And then I have a son in the middle who is 12, and a daughter that is 8.
Oh, you have all the ages going right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
You got them covered.
There was no planning. There was never any planning. It was always like, okay, here's this. I could never plan it anyway. I was terrified of being pregnant, so it needed to be a sneak attack.
A sneak attack.
I mean, that is how I describe it. It was a sneak attack. Yeah. Oh my god.
I had one sneak attack.
You had one?
I have 3 kids. I have a 23-year-old, 20, and 18. And so one was a sneak attack.
One was a sneak attack. Oh, they were all mine a sneak attack. Because I was always like, am I staying or am I going? So I wasn't really planning. It was just like trying to make it to the next day, month, year.
Yeah. Are any of the kids into the theater world?
Not really. I mean, my oldest is into fashion. She thinks she wants to go into fashion design. My son plays the drums, so he's like very musical, but I don't think has an interest in theater. The youngest, maybe.
Oh, okay.
You never know. But I would encourage her to think about a double major.
A double major.
Theater and finance. Theater and business. Theater and marketing. Theater along with anything that is going to ground you so that you can actually afford to do theater.
Yes. Very good. I cannot wait to see Pulp tonight. I'm so excited. Would you mind showing us the set?
Let's check it out.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so here we are on the set of Pulp by Patricia Kane at Island City Stage in Wilton Manors. And you can see that there really are no surprises. What you see is what you get. This is a play that is set in a bar, and literally every scene plays out in this bar, which suggests that queer people's lives in the 50s when this play was set, like so much of their lives played out in these tiny little underground spaces. Mm-hmm. So we have our sign up there, the well, and 3 entrances. 2 are interior entrances, and then the exterior entrance. And these doors get used constantly. The play is very dramatic. There are a lot of nods to old Hollywood. So there's a lot of posing and a lot of door slamming. Oh, yes. The bar is really the centerpiece of the set, and the actors make great use of it. They are all over it, front of it, on top of it, behind it. You can see right now that there are a lot of drinks on the set because the bartender character named Pepper serves what feels like a million mid-century drinks. Manhattans, grasshoppers, there's whiskey, there's shots, there's martinis, you name it. She had her work cut out for her. It was like she went to bartending school to figure out how to succeed in this role because there are so many drinks that have to be made at each show.
What is there any sort of like fun, like little like theater magic? Like, is there anything cool behind the bar, behind a door? Is it sort of like
so behind the
hidden
bar?
Things
there is a platform behind the bar because the bar is so big,
it's huge,
that I didn't want the actors to be buried behind it. So we had to create an elevation so that everyone could be seen, and we didn't create sightline issues.
Yeah, in movies, that's like an apple box or
And there's a lot of labeling of all the special drinks and things that get made.
Oh yeah, this is
it's a nice little grid here, and there's one of the Pulp Fiction books that's referenced in a play called Women's Barracks. Is
that a real book?
That's a real lesbian Pulp Fiction book. Yeah,
that's cool.
There are about 3 different books that are referenced, but there were a lot more. I mean, it was a thriving genre in the 50s.
Oh, look at the fake money 60s. Too.
Yeah. Oh yes, fake money, fake tip money.
I love it. Coins, key. Look at
luggage,
this.
and then it gets filled with more over the course of the show. They bring out and stuff things that they need to strike and. It's really a musical. Is it considered a musical? So we had some debate about whether it's a musical or a play with music. It's a play with music per the playwright. All the music in the play is original. All the music with lyrics. So there are, let's see, how many? There are 4 of the 5 characters perform in drag. So there's a whole setup in the first main scene at the bar where they talk about this underground kind of performance that happens. And here is our little stage where all of the drag performance happens. And the drag personas in the show really run the gamut from like very sexy feminine drag where it's like Greta Garbo or Marlena Dietrich wearing a suit but still looking very feminine, to more butch. So there are two really feminine drag kings, and then there are two more butch drag kings, which is true today. I mean, the landscape of drag kings has really evolved, and there is no one size fits all way to be a drag king. They're artists, and they're all different, right?
This is fabulous.
So shall we belly up to the bar and keep chatting? Is there any other fun, secrety theater magical things?
We have our
jukebox.
We have our jukebox in the corner here that gets used throughout.
Oh.
And we really use the whole space. So we pass around through the house of the audience.
Oh, we all do.
And so they come, the actors come all around through the space.
Okay.
And then if you come backstage, there's a crossover. And when they slam this door and come out of it, they cross around through this hallway and back around to the dressing room for quick changes and stuff. So
cool. There.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Here we go. I love behind the scenes.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is that this will all get struck and a whole new show will come up with the whole
I know.
new set.
Isn't that like, that's just crazy.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing figuring out how to repurpose and recycle things, because there can be a lot of waste.
That's true too, yeah.
So that door leads to where you just showed us?
Yes, so this does a full circle and then straight ahead takes you into the dressing room. I feel like we're in a really strange kind of moment. And I think about that for a lot of reasons. I think about it with the work I do in theater, with the plays that I've staged recently that are all lesbian focused, that are all set in different time periods, the 50s, the 70s, and the 90s. It's makes me consciously mindful of our history and of the fact that progress is not linear. And in this moment that we're living in now, we are very aware that progress is not linear. And so it's this constant kind of negotiation of between what we have accomplished and what we can do and what freedoms we still have that remain and what is also on the line. I mean, here in Florida, in Wilton Manors, we are definitely in a safe bubble to an extent. But in the state generally, we're not. And it's a strange time to be navigating being a queer person and also being a person in a leadership position and wanting to provide support to queer youth and to raise children and raise them to believe that it's okay, that however they identify, it's okay, and however their parents identify, it's okay, because there's so much messaging that goes against that. So we're in a strange moment again.
Like you were saying recently, I mean, the Florida government hasn't been that supportive of our community. Why do you think it's so important to stay here in Florida and show and fight back? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it doesn't feel to me necessarily on a daily basis like we're waging some war against DeSantis, although perhaps in time that's how we might look back and interpret it. For me, what feels positive in spite of how challenging this moment has been, really going back to probably January of 2023, January of a year ago is whenever there started to be legislation that DeSantis was putting in place that was starting to restrict what kids were learning at school and restrictions on drag performance. And but to me, and despite of all that, what feels really positive is that for some reason, stars have aligned in the last year or so, and it seems like there is more representation and more sense of community for queer women in this region that I've ever witnessed. And I've been here in South Florida for 14 years. And I'm not really sure what to attribute that to. I mean, I think it's a number of things. I think it's, you know, enough distance from the end of the pandemic, and people feeling safer to be out and about. I think it's the funding of certain organizations like this. There's a foundation called the Our Fund Foundation, which is an LGBTQ philanthropy organization that has been incredibly supportive of LGBTQ nonprofits. So my company, Thinking Cap Theater, Island City Stage, where we're sitting right now, the theater next door, Plays of Wilton at the Foundry, Lesbian Thespians, the Pride Center's launch of Women with Pride. I mean, there has been funding support by a dedicated LGBTQ philanthropy organization that I think has been a lifeline for all of our queer organizations locally. And I have been a very squeaky wheel about representation for women and funding for programming for queer women. And it seems like it's working, and more women are showing up. And so for the longest time, you know, what I heard was, you know, lesbians don't go to the theater, or there just aren't enough queer women around to create programming for. But the more the programming has started to appear, the more queer women have come out of the woodwork, so to speak. So that to me feels really, really special, and something that, you know, that a lot of queer women that are leaders of different organizations are really trying to come together and capitalize on this momentum and keep building community and keep creating opportunities for us to be more and more visible.
That is great to hear.
Yeah.
I love that. So with the kids, do you and your partner, how do you celebrate Pride Month? Do you do anything with the kids? Is there anything that they look forward to celebrating?
We don't necessarily. I mean, I feel like around our house that every month is kind of Pride Month, because one way or another, something that we're working on creatively always taps into something that's queer. It doesn't matter what it is, even if it's not even intentional. It just somehow happens. So they're very aware of their surroundings and people in their world that are caring for them or are a queer couple. I think, you know, I've experienced between differences in gender and differences in age with our kids, a range of responses to what it's like to be in a household with two moms, and with my oldest, for the longest time, it was not very positive. It made her feel like she needed to take a stand for her own straightness. In the wake of this, like, well, just because you're telling me you're that doesn't mean that I am. And that's also growing pains and the time in life when she learned this. I mean, she was how old was she? 12, 11 going on 12. My son has always been very accepting, and he was old enough to be very conscious of what it meant, but he's always been very accepting and always very questioning and not afraid to just, you know, have conversations about it when he was initially processing it. My youngest doesn't really know any other way. And so she really, to me, like, is daily evidence of how effortless and how simple, how joyful it can be if you don't have preconceived notions of something, of passing judgment on something, if it is just your reality, and that the language you hear is just love who you love, be who you want to be, wear whatever color you want to wear. If there are no limitations, if nothing is taboo in those kinds of ways, then she is living proof that is your lens that you see the world through, and it's just a lens that is much more, I think, productive and warm and inclusive, and so I feel like if nothing else, like that is something that I regularly am very grateful for. Yeah.
Have you and your partner been able to find other lesbians with kids around the same age as y'all's?
That is a nut we're still trying to crack. So, and I've talked with some friends. I've talked with actually Laylee of Skirt Magazine. I've talked with her about where these groups of how do we get a group? How do we form a group locally for parents? Not for parents with queer kids, but for queer parents with kids, whatever they may be, right? Because I feel like there are more and more queer families, and that is a little subsection of our community that I think needs to be identified and nurtured.
Looks like you're about to start a group.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I don't need any more on my plate.
Sorry, I know you said you're busy, but I hate to tell you.
But I do think that's really important too. And I can only imagine what it would be like for the kids of these parents to see that there are other families like that. Yeah. I feel like that would be a really positive reinforcement of like your life's all good, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you never? Yeah, you. I just kept thinking of Brentwood Moms Club. Stacey would tell me all these stories when she was with her husband, and like, well, the Brentwood Moms Club did this, and, and all of a sudden I'm like, the lesbian Brentwood Moms Club, the lesbian.
Can you imagine?
I know. Like, can you imagine?
I mean,
or gay dad too. I mean, there's men with kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're a queer person trapped in a straight life, there's nothing more torturous than attending straight school events, straight mom group of events like that through the years, like year after year. Once I had kids old enough to go to be part of groups like that, I would scan the room and I would just be like, one of these things is not like the other, and I don't belong here. Nobody here. Nope. Like, I would actually always joke and say that I had more in common with the dads than I did with the moms.
Yeah.
But I digress. Yeah. But it's true. I really did feel that way. I was like,
whenever I came out and left my husband, it was like the rumor just spread like that around the moms club, you know, did you hear what Stacey's gay? She left her husband. And I'd run into people and they're like, so I heard. I'm like, oh, I bet you heard. I bet.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely, like, especially I feel like if you're someone who's straight passing, that's where the shock comes even more. People never really knew what to make of Thinking Cap, of my theater company. Like, sometimes people would meet me and they'd be like, oh, I thought this was a gay man's company. And I was like, well, we have a website, you can see who it is, but sure. Like, just because the programming, they thought it seemed like an LGBTQ company and it must be run by a gay man. Right? But I'm like, no, it's run by me. But some people, whenever they found out that I had left my marriage, were like, I just thought you had like a perfect life.
Yeah.
Like,
they
were seeing like white picket fences and this was, and I was like, oh, no.
Like, but you don't look gay.
I know. Yep. All those things that you hear. So
yeah. Well, here we are now.
Yeah. Well, and that's so passing in pulp. Passing is a big thing because it's some of these women are very, very high femme, and they're very conscious of the fact that is what allows them to make it through in the world. They're femme by day and butch by night when they come down to the well.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. I'm so excited.